Hello. Lots of friends joining us right now. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's get started. For our new friends, I have a minute spiel of what to expect tonight, and then I will pass it over to Harold. So welcome all. Tonight we are talking about Mozart's Requiem, which is very, very exciting. We will be sending over more information about the organization and about Harold to the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. This includes a donation link. Harold is giving all of these sessions for free. Therefore, any and all donations are greatly appreciated. These donations go to Canticorum Virtuosi Inc., which is the non-for-profit that provides funding for both of Harold's New York-based choirs. These donations are also tax deductible. So Harold, you can take it away.
Thank you. Two more things. I don't know if you want to mention. Well, I'll mention one of them, which is next week is the full one until January. So we'll be doing Vivaldi's Gloria and an incredible madrigal by Monteverdi, Sfogava con le Stelle. And then I'm also hosting a talk about the B minor Mass on Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 12th. There's a slight fee for that one. It's a 2.5 hour long lecture about every aspect, every movement of the B minor Mass. So if you're interested, email me. Okay. So I've conducted the Mozart Requiem 19 times. Yes, I kept track. Almost all of them, well, maybe 14 of them were with orchestras, and 5 of them were with organ. Now, if I wouldn't do the Mozart Requiem with organ in a concert hall in New York City, in the olden days, no longer do we have very many reviews from major newspapers, but I wouldn't want to risk a critic saying, what's he doing? Everybody else is doing it with orchestra. But in Europe, sometimes the means to hire an orchestra or whatever. But I just want to tell you a few very, very quick anecdotes about the Mozart Requiem, and then we'll go right into the music itself. One performance I gave in Spain was in a cathedral that held about 800 people, but there were people who couldn't even get in. There were so many people trying to see it. And the whole first row was filled with older women dressed in black, crying throughout. I mean, very sweet. We signed autographs for 20 minutes outside. It was incredible. We gave 5 performances. Did I say in Spain? It was in Spain. And then when we were going to Andorra, the country right next in between Spain and France, the person who brought us over to Europe decided he wasn't going to pay the timpanist or the cartage to rent a truck, a little van to transport the timpanis. So I only found out about that when we were about to perform. Another funny thing that happened, interesting thing that happened was right before we went on stage, my wife, who was the soprano soloist for most of these, was asked by the mezzo soprano for spray. And my wife thought she meant hairspray, but she really wanted to spray her throat before she went on. So she sprayed her throat with hairspray. Okay, was covered. And the show went on. Here we go. I'm looking at 2 different scores. One is the Schirmer vocal score. One is my full score in clefs, 4 different clefs for the singers. I'm using, I have, the version that has been used for ever since it was written was the Süssmayr version. On his deathbed, Mozart was still calling out melodies, and his student Süssmayr completed it. Okay, I love that version. That was the one I, used. But then one time, it was in Israel. I conducted this in Israel, and big audiences there. Think of it. But I used a Robert Levin version. Robert Levin is a great scholar and pianist, and he has his own version where he finishes the sketches. And musicologists like it. I liked it too, but I'm going to talk about the Süssmayr version. Okay, so the very opening. Let's put the first page up. This is the vocal score, so you're not going to see the instrumental. There aren't very many passages for instruments only, so we're not going to be missing much. But the very opening is marked Adagio, and there's a lot of activity. So I conduct this in subdivided 4. Now notice that subdivided 4 is not where the ands of each beat are as large as the numbers. That would be like 8 time, which is very rare. Notice 1 smaller, 2 smaller, 3 smaller, 4 smaller. And it's very colorful. You have basset horns and corner, yeah, and at the very opening you have the bassoon, the trumpet. Okay. As you know, I like to give cues. So, and the singers like cues, and the instrumentalists like cues. So at the very, very beginning, where you don't see it, but the bassoons come in on the second beat. 1 bassoons. There's no professional bassoonist who wouldn't come in if I didn't give a cue. But why should I pick and choose? I like giving cues. Performers like getting cues, including instrumentalists, and especially timpanists and brass players, especially trumpeters, who sit for sometimes for 10 minutes before playing. So you want to bring them in. Okay, the very first entrance. Let me just put something so it's not blocking the music. Okay. Well, it's Latin. So obviously you want to not to sing American R, it's a flipped R, Requiem. I don't think you want to do a rolled R like in German. You'll notice that each of the 4 parts has a forte marking. I'm sure that's Mozart's. And therefore, you don't want to have parts that have come in, which become like background material as each part enters. You don't want them to soften, because this is not like a long fugal theme which needs to be heard and then not heard as the next part comes in. So you don't want to come down in volume. So it's just everybody come in forte. Remember, in Latin, there are no glottals. Let me think. Yeah, no glottals. So and I only learned this, a good deal into my career, a good long while into my career. I decided not to go. I'll sing the soprano part incorrectly. Requiem et. See what I did? Requiem et. I went M-A with a glottal stop. For those of you not sure what a glottal is, it's entering with the vocal cords come together for a fraction of a second, stopping the flow of air. So in Latin, you want to go Requiem, just connect it. I was confounded. I'm dumbfounded when I heard that, but it's true. All the professional singers in New York know that. Okay, delving even more specifically into things like phrasing, even though it's forte, I doubt. Well, let me just stop and say this. For those of you who are new, I'll say it again that every single piece I've ever conducted, before I step on the podium, even before the first rehearsal, I sing through every part and I put markings. So let's look at the bass part. If you were to speak that, even if you didn't know what it meant, eternal rest, grant them, oh Lord. Okay, but even if you didn't know that, even if you asked a junior high school student to read this, they might go, Requiem aeternam. It seems to me it's pretty clear. It's dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Different levels of stress. And because the word aeternam repeats in the bass part, you do want to have them breathe. That's a general principle, which I say general because it's not 100% of the time, but it's so slow. Of course you want them to breathe. So the thing is, you put a breath mark, but you have to put something else there. What else? You have to put a decrescendo up to nam. Requiem aeternam, not ternam, right? The typical singer will rise up in volume as it rises up in pitch. And there's the start of a whole interpretive process that will distinguish you from other people who don't bother singing through each line. Now, that's, again, it's not a principle that happens all the time, but it's basically this principle of you sing it the way you speak it. Let's go to the second page, and we'll never get past the first page. I can keep talking about the first page. No, I'm sorry, I meant the second system. We're still on the first page. Dona A's do. Now, the question is, even at this slow tempo, look at measure 12. Let me just look at my full score a minute. My full score. Yeah. There's a comma after the word domine, but there are also 2 16th notes. Are you really going to have time to breathe? Probably not. So I would say breathe after dona is. Do. No, I take it back. Figure what I said. Even at this tempo, no, I'm going to sing the soprano part. Nam dona is domine. I think there's plenty of time to breathe at this slow tempo. Yeah.
Hey, Harold.
Yes.
We have a question.
Yes.
Would you use Austrian Germanic Latin or Italian Latin while performing this piece?
I usually used Italian. I mean, there's too much. If I were in Austria, I would do the Latin. I would do the Austrian, Germanic, Italian, Latin. But most people would find it in this country difficult to learn all the pronunciations. So yeah, a good question though.
And just for the future, if you do have a question, Harold doesn't mind taking questions in between the Q&A if it's pertinent to what he's talking about then. So you can just raise your hand or ask if it's a good time to ask a question.
Yeah, but I can't see everybody because I'm looking at the score, so I moved. So if they raise your hand, you can tell me there's somebody.
Oh yeah, just find a good stopping place and ask him if you can ask a question.
Right. Now, again, a good conductor will constantly try to seek the structure, the form. I don't mean necessarily like in rondo, knowing exactly when the B theme is there or the development section in sonata form, but to make some sense of the structure of a movement or a section or a piece. So, for example, it's been very subdued from the beginning. Even at a forte tempo, the notes are kind of low for the singers, and it's dark, grant them eternal rest. But I feel the need to rise up and measure 12 and 13 with a steady crescendo. So the sopranos, for example, Domine Requiem aeternam. In this case, you don't want to come down to nam because you know what I mean? That's just a piece of the puzzle. And the grand scheme of things here is for everybody to get louder because you're you're coming to the very end. Go to the next page, please. The next system, I should say. You're coming, look at it. It's chordal. Is domine. And et lux perpetua, and let perpetual light shine upon them. Et lux perpetua. Now, here's another thing you have to be careful of, because most people, conductors included, I'm afraid, I would imagine, I haven't taken a survey, but I've noticed that most people would sing this like this. I'll sing the tenor part. And I'll sing it the way I think most uninitiated people, let's put it that way, might sing it. Et lux perpetua, tua. When I hear somebody singing tua, where it should be perpetua, not perpetua, then I just shoot back at them, shubop, shubop, tua, shubop, shubop, and they crack up in rehearsal, and they realize that they shouldn't be accenting because really, perpetua, not perpetua. And you go from u to your mouth flies open, so it makes it even worse. Yeah. So, but the thing beyond that I hear people doing incorrectly is et lux per. When you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 notes of the same pitch, the same, pretty much the same rhythm, or the note value, they tend to forget to sing it the way you would speak it. Now, again, it's not always the case that you should. You might want a very commanding presence here. Et lux per. You know, I pretty much made et lux per the same weight, W-E-I-G-H-T, with a slight more accent on pe, of petua. Or you might go, et lux per. But I think that's too subtle to make it da 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 da. You just have to, you know, be aware that people tend to stomp and butcher lines like that have repetitions. And then in the fourth measure, luceat, I see nothing wrong. I mean, the word is luceat. So I see nothing wrong with not only coming away to AT, but actually coming away through that quarter note, which is something you don't want to have a very average chorus try to do too often, because it'll be messy. But now that I'm saying that, I'm looking at my full score, and the full score has the cello and the basset horn and the bassoon coming in on the third beat, where you have a printed half rest there. They're coming in on the third beat. So what I actually did was ask my singers to make AT, transform it from a quarter note to a dotted 16th, like this. Luceat, luceat. So you put the T on the fourth of the four subdivisions of the second beat, right? To, E, and off. And then the instruments will be, the instrumental entrance will be heard clearly, unobstructed by the T that would have to come on their entrance. It's an interesting and very subtle thing you might want to try. Okay, let's go on. Then the soprano comes in. Try to make sure you get a soprano who can do this all in one breath. It's not that hard, you know. Let's go back. Let's go on, I mean. Oh, hold on. There are two ways, aren't there, of doing, in the last measure on top, et TB, right? A lot of singers might go, eti. I remember fondly this woman in my church choir named Etty. She looked like she was 102 years old, and 30 years later, she was still around, and she still looked like she was 102. But that's beside the point. Her name was Etty. Maybe you want to go et T. Put two T's in there. I like that. Et T be read. I like singers who are careful with diction. Okay, let's go on. Scroll down. Yeah. Oh, here's a good one. The word is exaudi, right? And you're not talking about a used car that you used to have. You're talking about here, our prayer. What are the words here? I don't, Audi here, I forget it, but it doesn't matter. But my point is that the pronunciation is exaudi. And if you look at the tenor part, you know that most tenors are going to go exaudi, because they jump up a fourth. So they accent the high F, which is a real no-no. Even the basses have to be instructed. Maybe a horizontal line above their second note would do it, which means a slight accent, also the tenors. And then you'd have to put a horizontal line above every one of the eighth note exaudies, you know, AUs. I don't think you have to do it with the sopranos because they're jumping up a third from X to ow. Okay, let's go to the fugue. It's a double fugue. Well, even before the fugue, you have, yeah, that, no, I mean, go to that, yeah. You see, you got to be careful, not to forget to shape each line. There's so much happening here. And you don't want to leave the basses to perhaps sing their last note, the E natural in measure 36, the downbeat, too loudly. Ternam. No, get out of the way. The word is a ternam. Get out of the way. Now, how do you do this? These 16th notes. Do, na, do, na. Just very legato. You might want to put a little hairpin on the soprano one, for example. Do. Well, if you're doing a little hairpin on the soprano, you're going to want to do it prior to that with the alto. Anyway, let's go to the actual fugue. I can talk for hours about this, but we need to cover some material here, which is, keep going. It leads right into the Kyrie. Here in this score, it says it's the second movement, but in my score, it's just a double line. So it's Kyrie. I'm constantly citing these first 5 notes, these first 7 notes, when talking about shaping. You'll notice Kyrie dum bum is the same music as "And with his stripes" from Handel's Messiah, and Opus 20, number 5 of the Haydn String Quartet. Dum 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 bum. So you wouldn't know it from the Haydn, but you would want to do something with the Handel Messiah setting, keeping in mind that English was not Handel's first language. So he puts "and with his stripes." So everybody accents his instead of "and with his stripes," right? So you want to not let them accent his. And here it's the same thing. Most of the time I hear Kyrie ele instead of Kyrie ele. You can sing the 4th note loudly, but make sure you sing the 5th note, the C sharp, louder, and then come away. So that's what I want to say about this.
Harold?
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, would you have him do a glottal plosive on the ele zone? Just to...
Oh, yeah. Well, so, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Probably. It's a good point.
Yeah.
The same Valkyrie. Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's sort of breaking the rule. Well, wait a minute. Hold on. This is not Latin. This is Greek. So doubly yes. But if it were Latin, I'd probably do the same thing. I don't know. That's a good
yeah, I would too.
Again, this is very fast moving. So if you have a chorus where people cannot manage to do coloratura singing, you can have half of them go Christe D's, like very soft D's, and the others with H's, and the audience will not hear any D's. They'll hear nice articulation. And yeah, they're both equally important. These themes. So it's a double fugue. Every time you hear Kyrie, you hear the alto. Okay, let's look at the very end of the movement, because it's a matter of how you conduct it. So you have, look at measure 49. So I'll just do it. I don't want to take too much time, so I'll just do it. So right on 49. Da dum 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 da. So there's a fermata on the rest. Wait, let me just think. But now it's adagio. Right. Let me just think. So what I would probably do is this: son off, and then I'd give the and of 3 like this, and 4 and 1. In other words, conducted in 8, conducted in subdivided 4, like at the very beginning. So what you want to do is you want to have your hand, when you cut off the half note fermata, on the right hand side, the arm on the right hand side, which you would normally do. So it's pretty easy here. Off, and then give and 4 and, yeah, and keep conducting, keep subdividing. Even for example, on the 3rd beat, there's no and printed. There's no 3 and note. I would just keep, for consistency. Kyrie eleison. Yeah, let me just look at the very, very end of the piece. The very last movement is the same music. That's where, when the timpanis were not brought over into that little country, which is the half the size of Brooklyn, called Andorra, I still, and the timpanis played 4 16th notes right before the final half note, whole note. I still conducted like dun, 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 because I just couldn't relinquish that movement I wanted to do, but the timpani wasn't there, so it was sort of silly. Anyway, that's one of my silly stories. All right, let's go on. So the whole note doesn't mean anything. The whole note, I mean, it can, you can have a fermata on it. It's meaningless just to say it's a whole note and to try to stick with it exactly. Okay, so now very fast. This is a day of wrath, day of judgment, when the earth shall tremble and all that. So how much prep gesture do you give? It's crazy to think you can give one beat. And it's, I think, crazy to try to give more, to think you have to give more than 2 beats. So I would simply go 3, 4. Now, is it marcato? Is it legato? Obviously, it's marcato. I mean, it's the day of wrath. So you don't want to go, you don't want to have it legato, like soothing and comforting. No. Notice what I did. I made a staccato on R-A-E. It's not printed, but that's how I hear it. And you can bet the instruments will do things like that. Even when there are no staccatos printed, they'll cut things short. The thing you should be careful not to do is this. I'll cite 2 other examples, and I'll do the incorrectness of it both times. Vivaldi's Gloria, 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 and Handel's Messiah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. So you don't want to go which is silly, but you know, you sometimes hear that kind of thing. Should you put a decrescendo? Nah, because they might come away too much. Just tell them, you know. So, but even though it's marcato to start, you don't have to think that the whole thing has to be marcato. I mean, there should be some shaping, like sovet seclum, in favilla, right? These should be shaped a bit, even if they're still marcato. Sovet sec. I don't think I think here you can definitely put a decrescendo from se to clum, sovet seclum, and a staccato. You know, yeah. I lost the. Okay, now I'm seeing everybody, but I lost the music. I'm sure. Here it is. You know, you got to start putting your thoughts in and helping the singers out, because the sopranos will go sovet seclum in favilla. You know, in favilla. So you can shape it. Okay, let's go on.
Harold, just a comment. Some of your gestures weren't being totally seen in your camera, so just for the future, just back up just a little bit more.
So here's the half note fermata. Can you see it now?
Yeah, move a little bit more center, but yes.
I'd be blocking my grandson's picture. I don't want to do that. Yeah, isn't that cute? He's so cute. All right. Anyway, fermata.
Harold, I'm so sorry. In trying to answer a question, I accidentally muted you. You have to unmute yourself, though.
Okay. So here we go. Just going back to the half note. And then and, right? And, for, and. That's all I was saying. Your hand is to the right, your arm's to the right, which is in a good position to give the and of 3, leading to the 4th beat. Okay.
Harold, would you consider doing the Dies Irae in 2?
Nope. I even started shaking my head before you finished the sentence.
Nah.
So there's too much happening. And where is it happening? It's happening in the orchestra part.
Yeah, lots of 16ths.
Last is 16th. No,
Yeah. No.
no, no. And there's something about the frenetic energy. As instead of the you know, it tends to be, it would tend to be a little legato, even a little more legato if it were in two, it seems to me.
And Harold, we might have one more question. I can't see whose name is under their picture, but if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask now.
No?
No, no more?
I don't know if it was me. I have raised hands, but my question is exactly the same. If
Okay.
they're doing in two, so it was answered. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, if you were to do it in two, I think you might want to give a whole measure prep at the very beginning. But of course, you don't want to go 1, 2. You want to make one smaller, like 1, 2. I don't think 2 is enough. Just one prep gesture, especially with all the 16th notes. Okay, let's go on. Go down. Yeah, just keep going. Yes, it's the same as the beginning. Now, no, go back up a little bit now. Quantus tremor as quantus tremor. I see this as a little more legato. I just do. I think you can make too much of a good thing when you have the whole thing marcato. Yeah, I'm looking at my full score, and yeah, it's legato. And then on cum ta, I had that suddenly marcato again in measure 57. Cum ta. Okay, let's go on. I should have the translation in front of me, but here it is. I have it right here. Quando judex espenturus cuncta stricte discussurus, how great a quaking shall there be when on that day the judge shall come to weigh man's deeds in each detail. All right, anyway. Now, obviously, here's something really obvious to me, but it's not obvious in the printed score in measure 40, which is scroll up. Yeah. Obviously, the basses are going to want to breathe before quantus tremor. So really, if they're breathing, everybody else has to breathe. They can't have quarter notes there. Sudus has to be a staccato for everybody. Let's go on. Quantus tremor. Let's go on. This is really, really important that those basses with natural wide vibratos are curtailed, because otherwise you'll have G sharp and A together 8 times in the measure. You know what I mean? On every landing, you'll have the whole series of pitches. No, you want to quantus tremor, really like hone in on that concept to make them sing pretty much without vibrato. Now this is the response. There's nothing in the score that tells you to do this, but I would do, and I have done, Rumpelstiltskin, Richard Nixon, William Clinton, now I can add Joseph Biden. How do you like that? Just thought of that. So you shape it like that, and there's a little bit of a break in between the two. And you know something? Now here I'll do the opposite. I would do the opposite of what I just told you in measure 41. I would put in more vibrato, more than you would normally use, because you're shaking in your boots here. I once did that I might have told this story once before in one of these lectures, but when I did the American premiere of Handel's Joshua on early instruments, on the word trembled, the earth trembled. I tremble. I had the singers trembling and and really overdoing the vibrato, and the critic liked it. The New York Times critic liked that. He pointed it out. It's just a little trick of the trade. You might want to do it. Okay, let's go to the next movement. Okay, so this is the trombone who plays. Now I have a note in my score that says slow down, don't slow down. And then I'll show you my score. As most of you know who have been coming to these lectures, I don't look at my scores. I don't prepare for these lectures. I don't want to, because everything I talk about I've conducted before, but I want to come to it sort of, you know, after not having looked at these for sometimes years, just to get a fresh approach. So I'm just noticing now that I have all kinds of markings here, like don't slow down, DD. Do you see DD? Don't drag. That means don't drag. Oh, here it is. I'm just telling myself. It's just for my own purpose. Yeah, that's why I put don't slow down. HR. That's me, Harold Rosenbaum. Or don't slow down. But then I have also faster. So it's faster, but don't slow down during the faster. Anyway, you got to do these things. And sometimes I actually have the words of a key passage at the beginning. For example, let me just show you this. Just the next movement, which we'll come to in a few minutes. Look what I have here. I have salvame in a box, a rectangular box, which to me means think of the tempo of on the word salvame, which come on the next page, and that's the tempo to start the movement at, because you'll notice there's a lot going on and I might be too hyperactive. So I think of salvame, and that's the tempo of the very opening tempo. It's an interesting thing that you have to do sometimes. Okay, did everybody hear that William Shakespeare got vaccinated today? As an aside, he did. He was one of the first men in England to get vaccinated. His name was William Shakespeare. Okay, anyway, that's neither here or there. Actually, it's over there, but it's coming here soon. So this is subdivided. Rex tremende. Oh, wait, let me just go back for a minute. Tuba mirum. Okay. One of the reasons I say don't slow down and faster is for the bass. They have a bass with courage. We'll sing this whole thing in one breath. Can you go show the rest? Show the. So tuba mirum spagen So sometimes they breathe after spargens, you know. But if they don't want to, give them a helping hand and don't drag, and tell the trombonist not to drag, because sometimes that'll slow everything down if you let it. Now, here's something else that's not written. If you look at the tenor entrance, it's measure 18. So look at the way I'm conducting measure 17. And look what I do right before measure 18. I'm delaying the downbeat. Why am I doing rubato in Mozart? Well, because I feel I can and should. And it's sort of like the Verdi Requiem in the first movement, where each soloist comes in preceded by a rubato. If you look at that score, you'll see that's standard. Necessary. I can't put it into words exactly why, but sometimes you just feel you need to slow down. And again, okay, let's say you're working with a famous soloist. I'm doing a series of interviews with people I've worked with. I'm going to start that going soon. And tomorrow I'm interviewing Rick, you might know him, Frank Lopardo. I don't know. He was a student. You remember Frank?
Oh yeah. He sang the solos in Orff, Carmina Burana.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, he sang at the Met 180 times. He sung with every major orchestra. It's unbelievable. And so he wouldn't do what I'm about to do, but some lesser tenor might go, "Ma stupendi tenatura," again, accenting the wrong syllable. And especially when you get a bunch of soloists together, you have to make sure they conform to your standards and what you want them to do. I mean, because if one person or two, three, if they don't agree on shaping at the end of a phrase, it can just destroy everything. They won't be happy with each other or with me. Okay, let's go to the next movement. And I have no idea what time it is, so maybe you can tell me when it's, what time is it, Karina?
It is 7:43, so you got about 7 more minutes.
Ah, very funny. Okay, well, let me plow through some things here. Oh, Rex, okay.
We can go till 7:55.
Yeah, let me know when it's 7:55 and then we can take some questions.
Okay.
Tell me when it's 7:50 and then I'll know there are 5 minutes left. Okay. Obviously these Rex should be full value because they're resonating, you know. King. It's, hold on a second. Well, King of fearful majesty. Let's scroll down. Rex tremende majestatis. Okay, then it gets lyrical. So again, it's the same thing that happened before. Right before the bass is saying, I said they had to take a breath and everybody else should sing staccato. So obviously in measure 7, tis. Everybody should sing tis staccato. And here it's more legato. I hear this is legato flowing, right? And again, don't get sucked into anything which takes you away from expressing the text the way you would speak it. I'm telling you that it's very easy to go, I'll sing the soprano part, how people would do it if they weren't thinking. Extra band de majesta, de majesta instead of majesta, right? You can sing ma loudly, but sing sta a little louder than that and shape it, especially because it's legato. Okay, did we skip a movement? I'm not sure. It doesn't matter because we don't have time to do everything anyway. Why don't we just go on? Recordare, it's a solo quartet movement. See here. Yeah. They have to do the same thing. In other words, if here you have a long note. So if they're going to just sit on the note and not do anything with it, like if the alto does that, then the bass can't expand on the note. They have to do it the same way. You have to make sure they do. So what do I mean? Without anything expanding, the alto might go, well, she might go a slight crescendo towards the end of the measure. You know, and if it's a slight crescendo, if she starts the crescendo on the third beat, the bass has to start it on the third beat. It has to be consistency there. And you know, good soloists will listen to each other and figure it out and do what the others do. But you have to work it out in rehearsal and put markings. Tell them beforehand what some of your markings are. Sometimes you don't have the time. If you're hiring a soloist from management, which I've done countless times, although most of the soloists I've worked with didn't have management, so they can spend a little more time with you and you can give them your markings beforehand. But somebody from management, they'll come and they'll do it a certain way, and that's the shaping has to happen in rehearsal, which is fine. Keep going, scroll down. What's anything stand out here? Keep going. Well, that last note, again, that's the one thing in my experience that has stood out as being a moment when soloists, when they get together, have trouble agreeing to come away to. It's ne me perdas ila die. And they tend to go, die, and they all open their mouth from E to E, and they sing the E too loudly. Okay, there's an exclamation point there. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't make any sense to pounce on a weak syllable. Okay, let's look at the next movement. This is a rather long movement. It's beautiful. I did this in Israel, and I brought 4 cantors, Jewish cantors from New York City as my soloists. That was great. And when we sang, I'll tell you a 30-second story. The morning of the concert on a kibbutz, the largest kibbutz in Israel, I gathered everybody together to ask them if we should go on with the show. Why? because I don't know if you remember, maybe 8-10 years ago, there was an Israeli soldier that was captured, and he was kept for 4 years. And the family of the soldier organized a 10,000 person march from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And they just happened to be landing in Jerusalem exactly on the day we were giving giving the concert. So the military, the Israeli military, was surrounding the kibbutz. So I called everybody to say, and the cantors are right in front of me. I said, should we, this is the situation. Should we go on tonight? And all 4 cantors immediately laughed at me and said, Harold, this is the safest concert you'll ever conduct. So we went on and had 850 people driving into the kibbutz, in their cars, and it was a great concert. I did it combined with my chorus, which I brought over, and an Israeli chorus, which I trained, and a wonderful orchestra. Confutatis flammis acri. Let loose here. Let loose. When sentence on the damned is passed, and all to piercing flames are sent, amongst the blessed call my name. Flammis acribus. Okay, but look at the next line. Vocame. Here, call my name among the blessed. It's suddenly completely different. Well, there's a sotto voce there. I doubt that Mozart put that in. That's in fact, that's italicized, so that's that gives it away. It's an editorial marking, but it's completely different. Very tender, very tender. Okay, go to the next movement. Lacrima. Here's where supposedly Mozart passed away after the 8th measure. Let's go to the 8th measure of the piece. After a crescendo. And that's where he expired. And it might be a true story, after he did that. You might be tempted to conduct this in 12. I'd conduct it in 4. I'd stay in 4. I wouldn't do like this. 1, 2, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12. 1. I wouldn't mess around doing that kind of thing. Yeah, could go on. This is a piece that's sung independently at times, by school choirs. Yeah. Now the question is, if you go up again for a moment, you see how each of the 4 parts in measure 12, or 3 of the 4 parts in measure 12 goes V, La, rest, rest. Well, the basses don't, but they can easily breathe there, and they should. Because of what's coming for them. But the question is, should the altos breathe? Scroll down a little bit. Remember the alto line. You see, they continue with Judicanda. I think yes. I think they can take a very quick breath because it's so slow. Right on the top of the measure 12. Measure 12, even though there's no printed rest, the altos can breathe there. Okay. Let's go on. Next movement. Very lyrical.
This is your 5-minute warning, Harold.
Okay, on stage in 5 minutes. So it's andante con moto. I think 1 beat is fine. 1 beat prep, but remember, I'm not sure if this was ever taught to me or I just figured it out instinctively. If it's too slow to give 2 beats prep and too fast to want to just do 1 metronomic prep gesture, you might want to do a slightly unmetronomic prep gesture, 1 of them, 1 prep gesture like this. Instead of do this. Like start very slowly and then pick up speed. If you have a nice arch, gravitational arch, then you can set the tempo by giving slightly more than 1 beat. It's a magical sort of trick of the trade. Ex Gloria, Ex Gloria. Now this is my favorite movement. The Quam Olim Abrahe. Can you go down? Keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And that, oh wait, go up a little bit. Okay. You know how there's, oh no, this is ne absorbe, keep going. Well, you don't want to go ne absorbent, da, 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 rather ne absorbent. I've said that many times, but here it's applicable. Ah, here it is. There's something about this akin to the minuet in Mozart's 40th. Dun, 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 dun. Especially dun, dun, the B section, dun, and then, oh, akin to the most spiritual things ever written. That this gets me every time. I am never not deeply moved by this for some reason. I can't explain why. It's just the most brilliant writing I've ever heard. You know, equal to Quam olim abre promises. I don't know. The trick is not to get carried away as a conductor. I've gotten a few times in my career, I've gotten a bit carried away so that I wasn't crystal clear in my beating. I mean, sometimes you're just conducting with tears running down your face, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it's getting so spiritual and lofty that you're like, where's the beat? Like the commercial, where's the beef? You're too young to know about that commercial. But I never got lost in space so much, but sometimes I'm just a little bit not careful enough, and you have to be really careful of that, not to do that. Sacrifice a little spiritual ecstasy at the moment for clarity, and then you can listen to the recording and you get spiritual ecstasy at that time. Let me open this. I mean, the last movement, there might be one more before this, there is, but the last movement, it was incomplete, so it's the same. You know, here's a nice shaping. Sanctus, 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 Dominus Deus. Yeah, and go to the very last, the Agnus Dei, you know, it goes into the opening fugue, double fugue. Mundi, come away. A lot of sensitive singing has to be done in this piece. Any questions? Ah, there you are.
Hi, Harold.
Hi, Harris. Was that, oh, Matthew.
Oh, hi, yes. Do you have any advice for how to train your choir to sing over an orchestra, as in have their sound come through? Do you have any practical things that we can do?
I have advice. Don't hire as many players as you might normally. No, it's not up to the singers, because you don't want to push their voices. You know what their forte is, you know what their piano is. So you just have fewer strings if you can. I've done this piece, you know, many times with, well, every time with between 28 and 35 players. You don't have to have, you know, 40 strings. But there are all kinds of things you have to do. You can't perform this with 30 singers if the orchestra has 40 people, 40 players. You just can't, unless they're mic'd. And even the New York City Opera and the New York State Theater had subtle miking done. If miking is done subtly and, you know, professionally, it can work. I wouldn't normally recommend it, but if that's the only alternative. And then, of course, where they stand on stage, I mean, it's not necessarily true that if you have a chorus, let's say there's no orchestra, let's just talk about acoustics. If you have the chorus very close to the lip, obviously the people in the first part of the orchestra seating, will hear them louder than if they were further back. But people sitting further back in the audience, believe it or not, might not hear them louder if they're at the lip of the stage. Somehow, if they're further back, you have to find the sweet spot. You know, if you're further back, you might have the ceiling, which might be angled, which will project the sound out. Every place is different. Yeah, but you got to get the brass to play softer, basically. They don't like to play softly.
Well, thank you all so much. We'll hope to see you next week.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good night. Good night,
Thank you, Harold.
everybody.
Right.